Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. We begin in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We send peace and blessings upon Muhammad ibn Abdullah and upon his family and companions until the last day. Inshallah, we will continue in covering Surah Yusuf alayhi salatu wa salam, Surah Ra'ad and Surah Ibrahim, which is the 13th Juz. We left off speaking about when Zulaykha, the wife of the Aziz, tried to seduce Yusuf والسلام, and how Allah saved him because of his sincerity and his ihsan and his fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how he was in a situation where there were so many reasons for him to fall into sin, and that this test was greater than the first test. The first test, it was ittirari, it wasn't by his choice, and this test was a test of ikhtiyari, or by selection, something that he had the ability to fall into sin. He had a choice, but Allah's putting him through these different tests, and he's passing these tests that Allah will raise him to the status where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for him, and so that he will achieve what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed from his honor, from the level of honor, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saves his servants who are mukhlasin, those who are sincere, and those who Allah chose, and how his protection for those who he loves is a special kind of protection, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the rububiyyah and the nurturing of the nurturing of the righteous is that Allah, He purifies them and saves them and wards off evil from them. And this is what we see in this surah. And also, just as one of the unique characteristics of this surah is that it's just as the previous surah, Surah Yunus and Surah Hud, were a consolement of the Prophet externally, for a consolement of him for the challenges that he was facing externally with the struggle between him and his people. This surah is also a consolement for the hardship that he's going through internally, and reminding him of the difficulties that Yaqub alayhi salam went through and the hardships that he faced. And one of the greatest tests that a person can be tested with is being separated from his children and not knowing what happened to them for years and years. And as the scholars mentioned, that Yaqub alayhi salam, some scholars say that he was away from Yusuf for over 20 years. Other scholars say even up to 80 years, and Allah knows best. But as Hassan al-Basri, he said, to what level was Yaqub tested? That when he said, someone asked about Yaqub's test and how hard it was said that he experienced the pain of a father, of 100 or 70, what 70 fathers would experience if they were to lose their children. Because when a person loses his child, this child passes away. That is that's an extreme test. But when a person loses his child and his child is alive, he experiences this deep sorrow and this deep pain and this deep grief every single day, worrying about what happened to his son. And they said that he experienced as if his son had died 70 times. So they asked what was his reward, and they said he had the reward of 100 martyrs, and he never lost hope, and he never had evil thoughts, not one moment within that period, in the entire period of time, not one day or night did he have negative thoughts about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a deep test that he had to go through, and it's a great lesson for us. After that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions how Yusuf alayhi salam how Allah sent someone from her family, from the family of Zulaykha, to prove that Yusuf alayhi salam was innocent. And Allah mentions how the women in the city got the news and started to talk about her seducing her servant, and that they were making fun of her and mocking at her. But the real plot was to see Yusuf alayhi salam, and this is why Allah called it makr, or a plot, because they were with this, the wives of the elite were talking about this. Their intention was her to defend herself, and they wanted to get the opportunity to see Yusuf alayhi salam, and she prepared a dinner for them, and they came, and once they ate, she gave them knives and fruit and told him to come out and present himself to them, or to come out. And he came out, and they cut their hands out of his beauty, the beauty that they saw, and they said, "This is not a man, this is a noble angel." And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that the Prophet, he said that Yusuf was given half of all beauty. And the scholars mentioned that when the Prophet went in Isra and Mi'raj and saw the prophets in paradise, he in heaven, and he said, فَإِذَا بِيُوسُف أُعْطِيَ قَدْ أُعْطِيَ نِصْف شَطْرِ الْجَمَالِ, and Yusuf was given half of beauty. And some scholars say that half of beauty is the half of the beauty that Allah gave the first man He created, Adam alayhi, our father, and how Allah created Adam in the most beautiful form, and the people of Jannah will be they will have the beauty of Adam alayhi, and Yusuf alayhi was given half of the beauty of Adam, and all of the rest of creation were they shared the rest of that beauty. Allah then speaks of all the things that Yusuf alayhi went through with his brothers, when in prison, and how the intention was to make him, the intention of Zulaykha was to make him low, لِيَكُونَ مِنَ الصَّاغِرِينَ, he would be from those who are low and debased, but he preferred prison over falling into sin. And this shows you the level of strength that he had in the face of haram. And may Allah allow us to as a ummah to embrace this and to embody these high morals that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Yusuf alayhi salam. Despite his beauty, some scholars say that he used to cover his face so that the women wouldn't fall into fitna. And he said that if you do not have mercy upon me, I will incline towards them and be from those who are jahilin. And jahil is not only not knowing, it's not acting upon what you know. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Nuh alayhi salam, when he made dua for his son who was a mushrik, he said, I admonish you not, least you be from the jahilin, the ignorant. In other words, going against what you know is ignorance. It's a state more than it is something that's academic or a lack of knowledge intellectually, but it is not. Jahl is a state of the heart. And when you obey Allah, then you are one who understands Allah's reward. Thus you have knowledge. And if you do not obey Allah, then you are a person of ignorance, even if you have book knowledge. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then explained that they decided to put him in the prison as not for things not to escalate. And when in prison, Allah explains the two men who came to him and how he took the opportunity to call them to Tawheed, and before interpreting their dreams, and they said to him that we see you from the muhsinin, the good doers. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explained how he called them to Tawheed and called him and explained to them that he left the ways of the pagans, and he followed the ways of his fathers Ibrahim and Ishaq and Yaqub, that they are not people to worship other than Allah, and that this Tawheed and knowing Allah and not associating partners with Him is from the greatest bounty upon them and upon mankind. But most mankind are not thankful and don't appreciate this Tawheed, this oneness of Allah, and knowing having the knowledge to worship Allah alone. And he said, do you prefer to worship different idols than to worship Allah, the one and the irresistible? And that he explained to them that these guys that they worship besides Allah are just names that they fabricated against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they have no authority to back up these beliefs. And then he said the hukm, the judge, the ruling belongs to Allah, and Allah commanded that you worship Him alone. This is the upright religion, the correct path, but most people do not know. So this is the sunnah of Yusuf alayhi salam. This is that he took an opportunity when they came to him before he interpreted their dream. He took the opportunity to call them, to save them from the fire, and this is what happened. And one of them lived, and the other died. And the one who lived, he told him to speak to the king on his behalf, and Shaitan caused him to forget. So Yusuf alayhi salam he stayed in prison for a longer period of time, either from 3 to 9 years. Some scholars say 7, some scholars say even up to 12 years. And then he interpreted the dream, and it shows you how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He wills something, he could change the situation of a person by something so small as a dream. The dream of the king was the means for him to come out of prison. He interpreted the dream that he saw seven fat cows being devoured by 7 lean cows, and 7 spikes of grain, eating 7 spikes of dry grain. And the king asked for the interpretation, and the elite were unable of interpreting his dream, and they said these are meaningless dreams. And then the one who was saved, the one who was caused to forget by Yusuf, by Shaitan, he remembered, and he went to Yusuf and he said, Yusuf, ayyuha Siddiq, you Siddiq, and he called him the truthful one. And this is an indication, it reminds us of the hadith where the Prophet, he said, the more truthful a person is, then the more vivid and the more truthful his dreams are. And Yusuf alayhi salam was a Siddiq and a Nabi, so they call him Siddiq. And he says, Aftina, give us the fatwa of this dream. In other words, give us the interpretation. So when he interpreted the dream, he not only interpreted the dream, but he also added more information that was not in the dream, which indicated his the knowledge that he had, and that he was a prophet. He had knowledge of the unseen by Allah's will, and that he was brought forward, and the king requested that he be brought to him, but he refused to come out of prison, and until he freed his name, he said, go back and ask, what is the situation of the women who cut their hands? Indeed, inna Rabbi bikaydihinna alim. Indeed, my Lord is aware of their plot. So the Prophet said about Yusuf alayhi salam, Rahimallahu Yusuf, may Allah have mercy upon Yusuf. Indeed, he was forbearing and enduring and patient. If I was in the situation that he was in, I would have come out of prison. And then the wives of the elite were gathered in front of the king, and he questioned them all. And this is out of in order not to expose the Zulaykha, but he questioned them all. He knew who the situation or the case had been, or who was guilty, but he questioned them all, and they said, we don't know any evil about him. ما علمنا عليه من سوء. And then Zulaykha came out and said, now the truth has come out, that I am the one who tried to seduce him, and he is from the truthful. So, and then Allah says, ayat 52, ذلك لأني لم أخنه بالغيب, that this is the reason why I'm admitting and telling what actually happened, so that my husband would know that I didn't betray him when he was not present, the lack of his presence. So this is Zulaykha saying this, and the pronoun here, I didn't betray him, is referring to her husband, that she didn't fall into zina, but she didn't do anything more than this mistake that she made. And she said that I'm not one to claim that I am free from mistake. Indeed, the soul is it calls to the nafs, it calls to evil, and except for those who Allah have mercy upon them. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains how the king requested Yusuf alayhi salam, and how Allah gave him position with the king, and gave him position in the land. And Yusuf alayhi salam requested to be in charge of the wealth of the kingdom. And this is the evidence, as the scholars say, that the strongest opinion regarding to asking for position is that it's permissible to ask for position if a person is sure that he has the ability and he has the knowledge and the qualities to establish justice, and there's no one else besides him, as in the situation of Yusuf alayhi salam. He was the most qualified for these positions, therefore, and his intention was not for himself or for wealth or power. His intention was to get this very sensitive position so that he can establish, because this is the best position to establish justice. Otherwise, it's not permissible to ask for position, as the Prophet said to Abdurrahman ibn Samurah. He said, do not ask, Abdurrahman, do not ask for position of authority, because if it comes to you based on your request, Allah will entrust you to it. And if it comes to you without your request, Allah will assist you with it. And then the story continues that how his brothers came to him and from Palestine asking for provision, and how he treated them kindly, and he put and the people used to barter and trade, and they would bring things in exchange for provision, and how he gave them provision and also returned their goods that they brought, and demanded that if they do not bring their brother next time, they would not receive any goods. And the story of how they tried to convince Yaqub alayhi salam, and they had a very hard time convincing him. And this is the problem. This is one of the lessons we get from the story, is that when you lie and lose trust of someone, and that you may be tested. Allah may test you with a position, or test you again, and with the need to get something from that individual. It'll be very difficult for them to entrust you, or to trust you again. And he said, should I entrust your brother with you as I entrusted Yusuf from before, or his brother from before? And Allah is the best to preserve, and He is the most merciful. And then Allah mentioned how He took a covenant over them that they will bring his son back, except if they are not capable, or the circumstances are dire, and in dire circumstances. Otherwise, they would bring him back. And they took the covenant over themselves, and he advised them not to enter Egypt from one door, to enter from different directions, and this is because they were so beautiful. He was afraid, and they were so handsome, that he was afraid that they would be afflicted with the evil eye. And subhanAllah, once they came back to Yusuf alayhi salam with their brother, they were 11, and Yusuf alayhi salam, as it mentions in tafsir, that he had his servants accommodate each two separately, so that the 10, each one of them would have someone to stay with, but Binyamin was left with no one to stay with, and that was a way for him to justify taking his brother with him and bringing him and accommodating him separately from the other brothers. And Allah mentioned how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plotted for him and arranged and allowed him to get his brother to stay, and how the measuring tool was put into their saddle bags, or the saddle bag of Binyamin, and the caller called out, you caravan, you are thieves. So a caller called out. That wasn't Yusuf alayhi salam who said that. And Ayat 75 explains how he convinced them to establish the judge Binyamin with the law of Yaqub and not the law of the king. And that is that he says, what is the punishment of the individual who this measuring tool, which was made out of gold, it was belonged to the king, what is the punishment? And they said, the punishment is the punishment known to us, فَهُوَ جَزَاؤُهُ. So therefore what that meant was that in their urf, and what was known from where they came from in Palestine, it was that the person who stole, and then he was found to be guilty, then he became a servant of the person who he stole from. So this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, كَذَلِكَ كِدْنَا لِيُوسُف. This is how we plotted for Yusuf. In other words, we plotted for him to use the law of his brothers instead of the law of the king. Allah says, مَا كَانَ لِيَأْخُذَ أَخَاهُ فِي دِينِ الْمَلِكِ. He was not going to take his brother in the law of the king. In other words, the law of the king, that was not the legislation that was known and that was implemented in Egypt. That was the legislation that was implemented in Palestine. But when they said when they agreed to it, then he had the opportunity to keep his brother. And they say that he started with his brothers riding or sandal bags until he reached the youngest one, which is Binyamin, and he said, I don't think that he has it. I don't think that he stole. And his brothers said, no, check his bag as well, check him, and make sure he's innocent. And they found the measuring tool with Binyamin. After this, Allah mentions that how they made a statement about Yusuf alayhi salam, and his brother. They said, if he stole, then his brother has stole before. And Yusuf, he hid this accusation inside, and he didn't take revenge from them. He was in a position to take revenge, but he didn't. And it shows you the great ability of the great patience that he had to hide anger. And the Prophet, he said, whoever hides and swallows the rage, and he's able to take revenge, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will call him on in front of all creation on the last day, and he will allow him to choose from any of the hura'in, the women of paradise he wishes. And this is indication that this is a beautiful characteristic to look for in a husband, for someone who's able to control his anger. And when Allah he took an appropriate reward for a man who can control his anger. He allowed him to choose any one of the women of paradise, which shows you that Allah holds this quality and this characteristic in very high esteem. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains, ayat 79, that they said to Yusuf, ayat 78, 79, they asked Yusuf to take someone else instead of him. And he says, Ma'adallah, I seek refuge in Allah, that we take someone other than whom we found the measuring tool with. And this is him avoiding lying, even in a situation that Allah commanded him to obey him. He's still being extremely careful not to lie, because if he said we would not we will only take the one who stole, then and he knows that he didn't steal. So he said, instead of saying that, he said we would ma'adallah, we seek refuge in Allah from taking anyone besides the one we found the measuring tool with. So it shows you how the akhlaq and the manners of Yusuf alayhi salam, even that he didn't lie, he controlled his anger, he was patient, he was forbearing. These are beautiful characteristics that we have to embody from this story. And then Allah mentions how they were sent back, and the older brother, the same brother who told them not to kill Yusuf in the beginning, he also was the one who suggested, he was the most prudent and the most wise, and he said, I would not leave until Binyamin finds a way out. He says, فَلَنْ أَبْرَحَ الْأَرْض حَتَّى يَأْذَنَ لِي أَبِي, until my father gives me permission, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides, and he's the best to decide. And Allah mentions again the shock and how the test is escalating more and more for Yaqub, and how Allah is testing him so much with now this is a greater another tragedy. Now two of his sons have been taken away from him, and he says, بَلْ سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا, that your souls have seduced you to do something. So subhanAllah, the father knows, he knew in the beginning, and he knew now that there's something else going on. Even this, in the beginning, it was because of the seduction of shaitan, and now it's because of the plan of the Rahman. But he knew both ways that this is something going on. Before it was them plotting, and now it's Yusuf alayhi salam plotting by the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he says sabrun jameel. And the scholars mentioned that Yusuf alayhi salam, that Yaqub, as I mentioned before, was tested with the test of 70 people losing their children. That's the sorrow that 70 people experience for the loss of their children. Yusuf Yaqub experienced that all throughout this period of time, as if he's dying again and again throughout the years. He's as if experiencing the death of his child throughout the years, because the pain of losing your child, the pain of being deprived of a loved one but he's still alive and he's not dead. This is worse than the pain of losing a loved one through death. And he lost his sight because of how much he used to cry, but he never complained. Allah says here, ayat 86, I only complain my suffering and my grief to Allah, and I know from Allah that which you do not know. So he never lost hope in Allah. He never had negative thoughts about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He maintained a positive thoughts about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he knew that the interpretation of the dream of Yusuf alayhi salam was going to take place, and that he was going to prostrate to his son. So he was patient, and he didn't complain to his children, didn't complain to the people. He only complained to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a great, an amazing display of patience. May Allah allow us to be patient and accept whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees for us, and know that in that decree is a blessing for us. And as Musa alayhi salam said in Surah Al-Kahf, وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ خُبْرًا. How can you be patient with something that you do not have knowledge of? But he had knowledge, and Allah witnessed that he had knowledge. وَإِنَّهُ لَذُو عِلْمٍ. He's the possessor of knowledge of that which we taught him. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions how he advised his sons, go back and look for Yusuf and his brother, and do not lose hope and the mercy of Allah. Indeed, no one loses hope in the relief of Allah, Ruhillah, except the people who are disbelievers. In other words, on the last day, the disbelievers, when they enter the fire, they're the only ones who are hopeless, and there is no way for them to come out of the fire. But the believers, they never lose hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And his brothers came to him again, complaining of adversity, and that they came with a very poor quality goods. And they're asking for him to be charitable. And then he said, Allah gave him permission to inform them that he was their brother. He said, Hal alimtum, do you know what you did to your brother, to Yusuf and his brother, when you were in a state of jahiliyyah, of jahil? And again, jahil is not, when you don't obey Allah, then that is jahil. Even if you, in your mind, you know what's right and what's wrong, but when you disobey Allah, it means you're jahil. You don't really know Allah, because if you knew Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you would not have committed that sin at that moment. But so that the state of disobedience is the state of jahil, of being ignorant. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then explains how Yusuf, he gave them the great principle, إِنَّهُ مَنْ يَتَّقِي وَيَصْبِرْ. Indeed, he who practiced taqwa and patience, Allah does not let the reward of the good doers go to waste. And they admitted, they said, by Allah, he has favored you over us, and we were indeed evildoers. And this is something that they had to, it took them all this time to recognize and to submit to the fact that he was better than them, and Allah had favored him over them. And this is the underlining lesson, that if Allah favors someone over you, the way you deal with that is to love him, to appreciate him. As the angels bowed down to Adam alayhi salam, do not be like Iblis, because it will only make you lower and lower. And it is an opportunity to be with those whom you love by just loving and accepting Allah's favor, because those who envy Allah's servants, they're actually at war with Allah, because Allah is the one who chose the blessings for that person. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions how Yusuf alayhi salam told them to go back and throw his shirt on his father's face, and he will come back seeing. And when the bearer of the good news came, and he threw it on his, he put the blanket, or he put the clothes on his face, he came back, his sight returned, and this is a miracle. And the scholars mentioned that the same person, the same brother who brought the shirt, who caused him grief in the beginning, he was the one who Yusuf alayhi salam chose to go and put his clothes on the face of Yaqub as an expiation for that mistake that he made. And they asked for forgiveness. Yusuf alayhi salam, he said, he asked Allah to forgive them right away. And Yaqub asked, he said, "Sawfa astaghfiru lakum Rabbi." I will soon in the soon future ask forgiveness for you, and indeed He's all forgiving, most merciful. The scholars mentioned that that one day he mentioned the story of Umar al-Khattab when he heard Abdullah ibn Mas'ud saying, "Oh Allah, you commanded me and I answered your call, and you gave me orders and I complied. So forgive me, as this is the time of sahur, the pre-dawn period, and this is the time that Yaqub promised to make dua for his brothers in that time, and this for his sons, and this is why he delayed it for that time." And ayah 99, he says, "Udkhulu Misr, insha'Allah." He tells his father, he went and met them at the gates, or at the beginning of the city, as some scholars mentioned, and he said, "Enter into Misr in peace." And he raised his father and his parents on the throne, and they prostrated to him. And this is an indication that his father and his mother were both alive, as and contrary to a lot of the narrations that his mother had passed away. And he told his father, this is the ta'wil, this is the realization and the interpretation. So ta'wil in Arabic, ta'wil means it means interpretation, but it also means realization that something takes place. And this is why the Quran, when you say ta'wil al-Quran, the interpretation of the Quran, it also means the occurrence of what the Quran promises to happen. So the Quran, the ta'wil is when things occur, when things happen, then they become clear and as if it's interpretation. And this is one of the benefits of the word ta'wil. He said, "This is the ta'wil of my dream." And this story, so Yusuf, it emphasizes the different types of dreams, and how some, and the Prophet, he mentioned that some dreams are that a ru'ya, ru'ya sadiqa, true dreams are from Allah, and that al-hulm, bad dreams are from shaitan. And there could be people who are non-Muslim who have what they call not ru'ya salihah or righteous dreams, but ru'ya sadiqa or true dreams. But it's a ru'ya, the difference between a righteous dream and a true dream is that the righteous dream is for some, is indicative of the piety of the person having the dream or the person he sees in the dream. But a true dream could come from a disbeliever, as the king was a pagan, but it was for the benefit of others. It's not for the benefit of himself. So this is just some clarity as far as the dreams are concerned. And Allah mentioned how he mentioned the favor. Yusuf alayhi salam mentioned Allah's favor upon him throughout the years to his father, instead of saying instead of mentioning the grievance, the difficulties, and the grief that he experienced, he mentioned the good things. And this is from the characteristics of the believers, that they always remember the good and the positive. And he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he took me out of prison. He mentioned how Allah gave him a great favor by bringing them out of the desert, and after shaitan had to come between him and his brothers, so he attributed it to shaitan. Instead of saying my brothers, he said shaitan. And Rabbi latifun lima yasha, indeed my Lord is kind and kind in the things that he decrees. Indeed he is the most knowledgeable and the most wise. And then he made the dua, the beautiful dua, ayat 109, my Lord, you have given me from the kingdom, and you taught me from the interpretation of dreams. You are the originator of the heaven and the earth. You are my wali in the dunya, my protector in this life and hereafter. Let me die as a Muslim, and let me reunite me with the righteous. So it shows that he made dua for a good ending. And this is a lesson: those who have whenever something good happens to you, you remember that the end is the most important thing in your life. This true success is that you live your life righteous and you have the best ending. And we ask Allah for the best ending. Some scholars, they mentioned that Yusuf alayhi salam, he after Allah reunited him with his family and Allah fulfilled His blessing upon him, he longed for the hereafter and asked Allah to let him die. And Ibn Abbas, he said that no prophet asked to die before Yusuf alayhi salam, and the Prophet told us not to ask for death because of a calamity that befalls you, but he said if you're in a situation where you have to ask for death, say, "Oh Allah, let me live as long as life is good for me, and let me die as long when death is good for me." So also the scholars mentioned that when his family came to Egypt from Palestine, they came. They were just 80. All the people who came, other than his brothers, they were 86 people, and then they stayed in Egypt until they left the hands. They left with Musa after being enslaved by Pharaoh, and they left 600,000. Wallahu alam. These are things that Ibn Jarir and other scholars mention. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains the principle that he addresses the Prophet saying that most people, even despite the fact that you are eager to guide them, they will not believe. And he says, how many signs do they see in the heavens and earth, and they are heedless to these signs. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that most of them do not believe in Allah except that they associate with their belief disbelief or shirk or paganism in their belief with Allah, that they mix with their worship of Allah other shirk or things that will nullify their deeds. So this is why the Muslims are the only ones who worship Allah alone. If you look at all mankind, Muslims are the only ones who worship Allah without shirk. And this is the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And this is the Prophet said, ayat 108, this is my path, I call to Allah upon knowledge and insight, and me and those who follow me, and subhanallah, Allah is free from all deficiency, all impurity, all false deities. وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ, and I am not from the pagans. And Allah will remind He says that the previous messengers were men, they weren't angels, as most of the pagans thought they had to be. They were men who that Allah revealed to them from those people, and that the end for those do they not look at the end of those people who came before them? Why do these pagans, these disbelievers in Mecca, why they should look at the end of those who came before them, and that the hereafter is better for those who have taqwa. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned how the prophets remind the prophets how the prophets they went through hardship until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them victory. And this is not a fabrication, it is a confirmation for that which came before him, an explanation of everything, and a guidance and mercy for those who believe. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Ra'd, thunder. He mentions the greatness of the surah as a surah Makkiyah, and it's dealing with the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah, He starts by mentioning His lordship, how He sent down the book and truth, and how He raised the heavens without pillars that can be seen. And He mentions that He's above His throne, and He subjugated the heavens, the sun and the moon, and everything is in orbit. So Allah is mentioning His lordship, and after this Allah explains the state of those who deny the last day, that He says, وَإِنْ تَعْجَبْ فَعَجَبٌ, if anything is amazing, it's amazing that their statement, when we are dirt, we're dust, will we be brought back? Allah says, then explaining how they'll be punished on the last day because of their disbelief of the last day and the severity of disbelieving in the last day. He says, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ, these are those who disbelieve in their Lord, and they will have in their necks, they will have aghlal, or chains in their necks, and they will be are the people of the fire. They will abide therein forever because of their disbelief in the last day. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, and they ask you, He explains how they ask for punishment before the sin, before good comes to them. So they are asking, like the Quraysh used to ask Allah to punish them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, I mentioned how merciful He is to people despite their arrogance and their oppression. And Allah is the possessor of great forgiveness for mankind. And Allah is severe in punishment. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, ayat 7, how they ask for a miracle, and Allah reminds the Prophet that you are just a warner, and everyone that you're just a warner, and everyone has a guide. Every nation has a warner like you, O Muhammad. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains the vastness of His knowledge and His and how He is knowledgeable of everything that lies in the wombs of every creation, whatever they give birth to, or anything that's impregnated. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has complete knowledge of that which is visible and that was invisible. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Kabir al-Muta'al, the Supreme, and He is bigger and greater than than all of His creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Kabir. He is greater and bigger than everything that He created. So he's mentioning His greatness, and he mentioned ayat 10 how that whether you speak or whatever you reveal or conceal, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows it. And He mentions here ayat 11 how He sends angels that come in succession. Some come throughout the night, and then others come in the day, and they all gather during the time of Fajr and Asr. And the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions that these angels, Allah will question. He asked them, "How did you find my servants?" And the famous hadith, and they said, "We came and they're praying, and we left and they were praying." So that means this ayah indicates that there are angels that preserve mankind from the affair of Allah. And the Prophet, he said that there are angels in front and back, and they preserve the individual from they're like guards until the affair of Allah. They push evil away from him until Allah decides for him to die, and they let him they leave him for the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to overcome him. So whatever evil is intended for him, these angels in front and back preserve him, and the angels on right and left, they write the deeds. So there's 4 angels that Allah appointed for each human being. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that the thunder celebrates His praises, and the thunderbolt He sends to afflict whom He wills. And despite all of this greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they continue to argue, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is severe in His punishment. And to Him belongs the da'watul haqq, ayat 14, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who deserves the true da'wah. He is the one who deserves supplication and worship and da'wah. There's two types of da'wah of supplication. Supplication through words, which is to supplicate and pray and ask, and supplication through action, and this is ibadah. And Allah, He says, and those who they call upon besides Him, they do not answer the call. So Allah is establishing the Tawheed, establishing His oneness, His greatness, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, and to Him prostrates everything in the heavens and the earth, out of willingly or unwillingly, and their shadows in the morning and in the evenings, bil-ghudwi wal-asal. Bil-ghudwi wal-asal, you should go back and check the meanings of that, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bil-ghudwi wal-asal, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says here, قُلْ مَنْ رَبُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, who is the Lord of the heavens and the earth? قُلْ أَفَاتَّخَذْتُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ, have you taken others besides Allah that they cannot benefit themselves or harm themselves? And Allah gives the example of those who worship Allah and worship other than Allah as the seeing, the blind and the seeing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions that have they taken others besides Allah that created like Him, condemning them for worshiping other than Allah, that these things that you created, that you worship, they don't have anything to show to prove that they have created nothing. So therefore, what is the confusion about? Why are you confused? Why are you worshiping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is it that they created something like Allah, and then the two creations have caused you confusion? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that قُلِ اللَّهُ خَالِقُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ, Allah is the creator of all things. There's no confusion. So the only one who deserves to be worshipped is the only one who creates, who created everything. He's the only one who deserves to be worshipped, and He's the one and the irresistible. And Allah gave an example, a metaphor, He gave a metaphor of the hearts as they receive the guidance. How some hearts can receive the guidance due to the vastness of the hearts, and others are restricted. He gave an example of the rain that comes down from the sky, and it causes streams, and it picks up filth. So He gave example of water picking up filth, and He gave example of gold being burnt and being burnt in a furnace, and the metal or the gold or the silver, the filth that comes from it, or the filth, the scum that comes from the gold. So the truth is the water and the gold, and falsehood is the filth and the foam that comes along with it, and is wiped away. Allah says that the truth, that which benefits mankind, stays on the earth, and the scum and falsehood go away. And this is the example of the hearts, as that the hearts are like the soil, or the valleys. The hearts of the believers are receptive to the truth, and the hearts of the disbelievers are not receptive to the truth. And also, this is an example of falsehood, of the falsehood being the shahawat and the shubahat that are in the hearts, the desires and the ignorance and the lack of understanding in the hearts. When the revelation comes, it washes away the falsehood and washes away the shubahat and the shahwat, the desires and misunderstandings, just as when the water comes, it picks up foam and it wipes it away, and the water stays and on land, just as the truth stays in the heart. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, those who answer their Lord, for them is good. For them is the husna, the best abode. And for those who do not believe in Allah, or do not answer the call of Allah, if they have everything on earth to ransom them off from the punishment on the last day, then it would not be accepted from them. For them, they have the su'ul hisab, the worst answering before their Lord, and that is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will Allah will question them and chastise them for the smallest things. And the Prophet said, "Man nuqisha al-hisab u'dhib," whoever is questioned in detail, then he will be punished. But the believers, their reckoning would just be their deeds will be presented quickly, and Allah will forgive them. Bi'idhnillah. Then Allah explains ayat 19. فَمَنْ يَعْلَمُ أَنَّمَا أُنْزِلَ إِلَيْكَ, is he who knows that which is revealed to you is the truth, like he who is blind, spiritually blind. And إِنَّمَا يَتَذَكَّرُ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ, only those people of understanding, the ulul albab, they are the only ones who remember or take heed. Then Allah mentioned 8 characteristics of those who are ulul albab, who are the people of understanding: those who keep the covenant of Allah, those who keep together that which Allah commanded, not to be separated, those who fear Allah and have awe of Allah. Number 4, those who dread the punishment of Allah, those who are patient for the sake of Allah, and those who establish a prayer and spend for Allah, and they ward off evil with good. Allah says they will have the best or the final, the eternal abode. And he mentioned Jannatu Adn. What is this a final abode? It is gardens, and he explained that they will be in gardens of eternity, and that as the Prophet he mentioned that the offspring will be who are on lower levels will be brought up to the levels of their fathers, or that the family members will be reunited. So those who had less good deeds, out of the mercy of Allah, they'll be risen to the level of their families or whoever has preceded them from the people of Jannah. So they'll be reunited. Okay, Allah says, يَدْخُلُونَهَا وَمَنْ صَلَحَ مِنْ آبَائِهِمْ, and those who are righteous from their children and their wives and their offspring, and the angels will enter upon them from every door. Salamun alaykum, peace be upon you because of your patience, and this is the final home. And then Allah mentions the opposite of the disbelievers and those who break the covenant of Allah, and they will have the evil abode. Ayah 25. And then Allah condemns those who are happy with this life over the hereafter. فَرِحُوا بِالْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا, and that they are pleased with this life and the life of this. وَمَا الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا فِي الْآخِرَةِ إِلَّا مَتَاعٌ, is just, compared to the akhirah, it's just a small pleasure. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then mentions ayat 28, indeed those who believe and whose hearts are tranquil with the remembrance of Allah, indeed the hearts are tranquil with أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ, indeed with the remembrance of Allah the hearts become tranquil. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is praising the believers and praising and mentioning their reward and how they will have the best reward in the akhirah, and how he's reminding the Prophet ﷺ that every nation before him, ayat 30, كَذَلِكَ أَرْسَلْنَا فِي أُمَّةٍ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهَا أُمَمٌ لِتَتْلُوا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ فِي أُمَّةٍ, we sent you to a nation that previous nations have come before them, so that you can recite upon them, or tatlu, to recite and to demonstrate, to follow for them that alayhim alladhi awhayna ilayk, that which we revealed to you. And they disbelieve in Ar-Rahman. The Quraysh, they used to say, they didn't know the name Ar-Rahman, so they disbelieve in the word Ar-Rahman. They would say Allahumma, but they didn't know Ar-Rahman. Allah says they disbelieve in Ar-Rahman. Say, He is my Lord, La ilaha illahu, none has right to be worshipped but Him. I put my trust in Him, and to Him is the return. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explained when Quraysh is asking for a miracle like the previous prophets, Allah says if there's any recital, anything that were to be recited that would cause the mountains to turn to dust, and split the earth and split the earth open, or speak to the dead, it would be this Quran. And this is because they asked for a miracle like Musa, and like they said, Quraysh, they said, make Safa or Marwa, make this mountain, make it into dirt so we can plant crops, or do this or do that. They were asking him for different things, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is explaining that the greatest miracle is this Quran, and there's no miracle greater and more profound than the Quran. Allah Azza wa Jal, then He says that وَلَا يَزَالُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. He said that these disbelievers continue to receive, to be inflicted with a calamity, or it will descend near their homes until the command of Allah comes, and Allah will not break His promise, and that they made fun of prophets before Him. And Allah subhanahu, He says that He gave them respite until until His punishment came to them. So Allah's He's giving the Prophet consolement and reminding him that just as they made fun, and they're making fun of you, the previous prophets, their people made fun of them until the punishment came to them. And it reminds the Prophet that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is the watcher and the controller over every soul, that He has the right to be worshipped. Ayat 33, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, أَفَمَنْ هُوَ قَائِمٌ عَلَى كُلِّ نَفْسٍ. He who is in charge of every soul. And He says they made partners with Allah, they associate partners with Allah, and without authority. Allah says, قُلْ سَمُّوهُمْ. Name these gods to me. Are you informing of Allah of something that He doesn't know on earth? And He says, بَلْ زُيِّنَ لِلَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. The disbelievers, the deeds have become fair seeming to them, and they were turned away from the path, and whoever Allah misguides, then none can guide him. They will have a punishment in this life, and the punishment of the hereafter is more severe, and they will have no protection from Allah. Then Allah explains the abode of the believers, the muttaqeen. He says that its gardens, its rivers, and its gardens are continuous, and they are continuous, and this is the abode and the home for people of taqwa. However, the people of the disbelievers, they will be in the fire. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explained that are they equal, those people who will be in the fire and the people who will be in paradise? Allah has given this comparison again and again to let us know how serious the end is, how serious the punishment is, and how great the reward is for the believers. May Allah bless us to go to be from the muttaqeen. Then Allah explains that وَالَّذِينَ آتَيْنَاهُمُ الْكِتَابَ يَفْرَحُونَ, that He explained how the believers rejoice in the Quran, and some of the parties they disbelieve in the Prophet ﷺ, and Allah commanded him to tell them that I've been commanded to worship Allah alone, and I do not associate any partners with Him. To Him I call, and to Him is my return. And He commands him not to follow their desires, and that He is the only protector, and no one can save anyone from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's punishment. And also ayat 39, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, يَمْحُ اللَّهُ مَا يَشَاءُ وَيُثْبِتُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He erases what He wills, and He confirms what He wills, and that means and He has the Kitab, the mother of the mother book, and that means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He can change, He controls the decree, and He can change what He wills. And certain things in the Lawh al-Mahfuz, in the preserved tablet, everything is written, and it would not be changed, as some scholars mention. And with everything other like in the night of Qadr, or the book that take the writing of every year, Allah can change for His servants what He wills. But what is written in the mother book, or the preserved tablet, will not be changed. Or some scholars mention that Umar al-Khattab, he would make tawaf and say, "Oh Allah, if you wrote me as wretched or a person hell-bound, change that and write me as a person who is heaven-bound, or who will go to paradise. So we could make dua. We make dua and we ask Allah to change any evil that He has written for us in this life and the hereafter, to change it to good. And that is something that is permissible to ask Allah for, that Allah give us whatever you wrote for us evil, change it to good. And the Prophet, he said that dua and predestination or qadr, they go back and forth in the heavens, and that means that nothing can ward off qadr or evil decree except for dua. So this is the power of dua, that Allah can change what He's written for His servants. Inshallah, we will stop here, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us for our sins and make the Quran a witness for us and not against us. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.